Mrs. Iyer, the Director of the Archive, Dr. Ponarasu, who I just met, the many representatives from MIT, starting with the kind of visionary of the project, Dr. Sana Iyer, Dr. Ranu Bopana, the former president of the Alumni Association, Professor Hamsa Balakrishnan, the Associate Dean. If I missed anybody, my apologies. And all of you who have come to be part of this very important and I think interesting opening today. Welcome, good evening. Thank you for having me here. And only after I walked in here, I recognized that I've been in this hall before. I come every so often. Such a huge campus, I lose track of where I've been. But as I was coming, I was thinking to myself, I've had the luxury now in the last couple of weeks of being chief guest or guest of honor at half a dozen campus events, including alumni events at the College of Engineering Gindi, one of the oldest engineering, in fact, the oldest engineering college in India. My own REC Trichy, now called NIT Trichy, here, and then colleges of very different nature like Stella Maris and WCC and Ethiraj and all these things. And I was thinking, what is it that creates great institutions? How do we, and sometimes they're able to do it in 20, 25 years, sometimes it takes 50, 60, sometimes it only lasts 70, 75. How do you create institutions where continuously you set the bar very high and you create a culture and sustain a culture so that whoever passes through it can be in some way shaped and identified to that institution? Because at the end of it, buildings are buildings, land is land. People are very important, but people are transient. Even the longest serving professors or administrators, don't serve for more than a couple or 3 or 4 decades. And then these institutions last 100, 150, 200 years to be centers of excellence. And I think, of course, there are many answers, but part of it has to be about creating a particular culture. And the culture of every institution is different in its own way, even those of excellence. They have some things in common, but every institution is different. I was reminded of that just about 3 or 4 days ago. I had the pleasure of being chief guest at what they call an IAP tour. For those who've gone to MIT, the students get together and travel overseas during the independent activities period between semesters. And there were about 18 or 19 Sloan students who were here in Chennai as part of their India experience. And they were from all countries and at all fields they had come from. But once you spend time with them, you started seeing the commonality of the culture, not just between them, but between them and somebody like me who had graduated 20 plus years ago from the same institution. So whatever that is, I think the 2 or 3 components that are becoming more acknowledged and recognized and respected and therefore supported are things like expanding even the greatest technical institutions into the social sciences and investing in things like archives. I think these are now becoming very, very well recognized. In fact, I was reminded of 2 things that about a year ago I took my son on a college tour of the US and I spoke at many colleges, and I also took him to other colleges where I wasn't speaking, but because of my good friend Dr. Duflo, she had asked me to, Professor Duflo had asked me to speak at my old school. And so I said, why don't you just go and attend the campus tour? It was November or something of 23, I think, or maybe 25, I lost track, 23. And it so happened I had a little time, so I went and sat with him, and I was shocked when the student who was leading the tour, she said, just so you know, if you come to MIT, it doesn't matter what major you take. You can take nuclear engineering, you can take astrophysics, you will have to take so many courses in the humanities in your first year. And that's, coming from one of the premier institutions in technology in the world. And I must say that I had slightly broader education than Raghu, because he never saw the social sciences. But when I was at the Sloan School, one of the courses I remember the most was a course called Literature, Ethics and Authority. And it was so fascinating. It used not a single new text, all existing texts, movies, the 12 Angry Men, Moby Dick, Julius Caesar, to examine the nature of power, of authority, of influence, of shaping outcomes, and the kind of notion of ethics and are they permanent or are they pliable. And so I remember that still long after I've forgotten a lot of my finance courses and my derivative contracts and stuff like that. So I think this is a very important concept. And I'm so glad to see in my own experience here at IIT, I've come to the Institute of Social Sciences once. I was at the Center for Memory and Brain Studies, something like that. So I've come and spoken there. So I've only been back in India about 8 years after 30 years away. And I must have come back 3 or 4 times or maybe more, but at least 3 or 4 times. And a lot of them have to do with social sciences, with the memory, with in this case, anthropology or archives. So that's good, I think. I think it's so important that institutions of all types, not just universities, but universities are natural homes for archives. But every culture, every society requires a good archive, I think. And sometimes when I look around me, I feel like relative to the Europeans, relative to some of the best archivists of the last, let's say, 10 centuries, Tamil society has not been so good at creating archives. We have brilliant literature. We have things that last, poetry and scientific treatises of language or linguistics that last for thousands of years. But if you look at the actual historical archives, there's a lot of things we're discovering. I'm reminded every time I go to Kiladi, which is very near Madurai, which is a big archaeological dig, that every year we discover another layer, and another 100 years back, another 200 years back. And much of this is not recorded anywhere. Only after we discover and we start sending it for carbon dating and we start cross-referencing and all that, none of our ancestors really thought about perpetuating knowledge or perpetuating memory, before the age of computers and permanent kind of storage. Archives were the only way to pass things down. So I think for all these reasons, I'm very happy to be part of this event, to be here to help inaugurate it. It's going to last a couple of months here. That's great. I must say, as a minister, I get invited to a lot of things, but it's a rare occasion when I come to a project where I've been a part of it, because Professor Iyer had her student interview me, I don't know, about a year and a half ago as part of the project. And I think somewhere there may be a 30 or 60-second clip of my own input somewhere in the archive. So I'm very happy to be here. For all these reasons, I think it is indicative of things that we need to do. Maybe we haven't done so well, but we need to do. I'm very, very happy that institutions like MIT, which have gone on to shape the world in many ways, and particularly the culture of MIT and economics, whatever it is, has led to so many central bankers and so many policy setters in the world of finance, has this not yet adequately celebrated history with the South Asian diaspora, whoever had the luxury of attending there. And this archive brings that to light, which is very fortunate. And then, though it came out as a course, I'm very happy that the Institute, the departments, decided to invest in making it a project and then a permanent archive. And then now we get to see it travel and come to different parts of South Asia. And it'll be in Chennai for a while. I read somewhere in the backdrop that there's a relatively good link with Tamil Nadu, with Madras, with IIT Madras. I'm sure I'll be more enlightened about that as I go through the exhibits. But then in a way it's good that such an event takes place in this as opposed to any other place. So thank you all once again for inviting me, and I'm very eager, as the rest of you are, to see more about this. And I must conclude by congratulating Professor Iyer and all those who worked with her and the Institute at Cambridge, as well as IIT, Dr. Krishnamurthy, Dr. Ponarasu, the management, for hosting us. Thank you very much.
MIT India team titled Revolution on the
us to this event. It's our pleasure to be here. My name is Dr. Ranu Bopanna. I'm a graduate of MIT class of 1987 and the past president of the MIT South Asian Alumni Association. While I was president, I just began to think about when did the first JC come to MIT, and I was shocked to find out that it was all the way back in 1880. At that point, I said we have to have a project about this, and luckily I was able to find both Professor Iyer and Nareen Das, and this has been a true labor of love. We are so excited to be here today. I hope you get to see the exhibit, which is in the Heritage Center. I want to thank Mathandi especially for inviting us to bring it here. We also have a digital website, which you can find if you Google MIT South Asia Institute. And as part of this project, we have made a couple of films to tell the story. And I think you will really enjoy, I hope you'll watch all of our films, but I think you'll really enjoy this one. It's called Revolution on the Ganga. It is about the connection of MIT and the IITs, and you will find that IIT Madras is heavily represented in this film. So enjoy.
My father was an engineer, and I grew up surrounded by engineers. To be honest, I actually thought everybody grew up in an engineer they wanted to be.
Growing up, even before high school, I was quite interested in math, and I liked building things.
I like chemistry, so I said chemical engineering. And of course, I didn't quite realize that the chemistry had nothing to do with it.
In 1968, India didn't really have so many higher education institutions. I was fortunate enough to get into one of these.
My mother was my biggest champion. She had gotten married at the age of 14 and did not have a chance to pursue a career.
My thought was that after I graduate from IIT, I'll probably get a reasonably good job. So that was the only thing. There was no, I did not play with chemistry sets. I did not make home radio sets. I did not think I was a whiz kid.
Engineers, ultimately, you're designing things, you're trying to build better systems that work for society.
KIAP, the Kanpur Indo-American Program, turns scientists into practitioners, academics into diplomats, and engineers into revolutionaries. At the end of World War II, America positioned herself as the champion of the rapidly decolonizing free world. In October 1949, President Truman signed the International Technical Cooperation Act, marking a significant turn in American foreign policy toward engineering diplomacy. It aimed at curbing the influence of the Communist Soviet Union in developing countries by offering them scientific and technical assistance. President John F. Kennedy expanded Truman's vision in 1961, establishing the USAID, the United States Agency for International Development. Kennedy sought a diplomatic opening to India through a USAID contract to support IIT Kanpur with MIT at its helm.
In Kanpur itself, KIAP, Kaya program, was a consortium of 9 American universities. Really the top universities, from this country, like besides MIT, Caltech, Princeton, and Berkeley. etc.
The IITs were set up by Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru in the early 1950s to modernize India. He believed that engineers would reopen the window between India and the world through technology. But Nehru had publicly declared that India's foreign policy would not be dictated by the Cold War alliances of the American and Soviet blocs. Instead, he was keenly focused on steering India's industrialization through technological and scientific expertise with international assistance. Britain, Germany, and the Soviet Union supported the IITs in Delhi, Madras, and Bombay.
This was the period of the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union, and that really played a big role in this because the Soviet Union, Soviet engineers were on the ground in Bombay, and so Americans really wanted Kanpur to be sort of a symbol of American technological prowess and technological might. MIT, I think, always had a global vision of itself, its idea of using science and technology to build a nation, to develop industries, was really fundamental to MIT throughout its history.
Since the Second World War, when the radiation lab began to work with the US military, MIT had been closely associated with the United States government. Nehru had visited MIT in 1949, and when USAID offered the institute the Kanpur contract, MIT's President Julius Stratton sent Norman Dahl to India to advise him on whether or not to take this on.
The original director of IIT Kanpur, P.K. Kelkar, had this vision really of breaking out of older systems of engineering education, some that had come from the British, to really implement American ideas.
He thought it was such a great marriage between him and Kelkar, the director. Absolute meeting of minds. So he loved it, because that two of them together really built IIT Kanpur. What they wanted to do was to actually offer exactly the same curriculum that was being offered in MIT at that time. Right? So I'm actually in a group of those students who got it 100% what was being done here. Exactly the same curriculum. The style of teaching, style of everything was so different in IIT Kanpur that most of us as students were just absolutely gaga as to what is this place. The laboratories and libraries were open 24 hours a day. And I still remember going to the library and asking the librarian, how many books can I take out and for how long? She says, you can take out as many books as you want.
What the IITs did was take what was good about all of these other partners that they had and try to make something that worked in the Indian context.
Students at Kanpur thrived in the rigorous academic environment modeled on MIT. Dahl and Kelkar ensured that this was a truly equal partnership that avoided intellectual imperialism. This was an extraordinary achievement. They insisted that the American visitors were full-time staff and faculty, but their role from conception to execution was entirely advisory. Indians held a position of authority in decision-making, even as the Americans weighed in on curricular matters. The Americans took their families to India, sent their children to local schools, and helped build IIT Kanpur and its community, brick by brick, person by person.
I was being taught by such enthusiastic and young faculty members. These people really, really wanted to see India succeed. And they were true academics at heart, so when they met Indians, right, they met Indian students and Indian faculty, all they saw was these wide-eyed, kids who were just extremely interested. These guys were not there for money. They were there because they wanted to set up something which would survive them. And they succeeded beyond their dreams.
When I was at Stanford, one of my professors at Stanford in the Aero department was Professor Holt Ashley. He had been one of the people from MIT who had been at IIT Kanpur when this was set up. We had wonderful chat about how it was an exciting time in starting a new school and country that was very much developing at that time. And since then it's paid off, where he was always very happy to see an IIT graduate.
The establishment of the Computer Center at IIT Kanpur in 1963, and this was really something remarkable. So a computer was flown in from the United States to Kanpur, and it really became a center of education.
The KIAP program was nothing short of extraordinary, becoming the most successful and long-lasting collaboration between India and America at the height of the Cold War. This was a particularly remarkable achievement at a time when India had doubled down on its policy of non-alignment and pursued a socialist model of economic development, much to the consternation of American statesmen. For close to a decade, the KIAP revolutionaries deftly overcame these ideological battles. Even as Nehru's dream was realized, the lofty goals of the technological visionaries were put aside in 1971 as India and Pakistan went to war over the liberation of Bangladesh. American support for Pakistan, its Cold War ally, led to a US Senate vote to stop foreign aid appropriation to India. In retaliation, India stopped issuing visas to Americans and KIAP dissolved. But even as the Cold War chill asserted itself on Indo-American relations, MIT continued to be visible at IIT for long after.
People don't understand this fact that the American style of education, which is dominant in India now, really came out of